All right. I think we should get started.
Yeah, let's do it.
I think we should get started. What do you say, Schessa?
Yeah, I'm down. I'm ready.
All right. Awesome. So, welcome to the third Q&A session of the week. We had one on Wednesday. We had one on Thursday. And this is the moment we've all been waiting for. The Friday one. And it's with Schessa, pronouns she, they, and an absolute fire designer. And I can't wait to dive into so many topics and everything with you. So welcome.
Thank you so much, Ritesh. I'm super excited to be here. And for all these questions, I hope this can be like actually an intimate conversation. I'm really excited about that.
I have about 52 questions prepared. And that is not including the questions that are going to light up during our chat in the chat. So we can look at probably around 89, 91 questions, somewhere around there in the next hour. Am I right? Am I right, patience? Yeah. So here's the agenda for today. I have those said 52 questions to go through. Obviously, as y'all know, if you have any burning questions that feel right to ask during the time, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'll do my best to moderate them and ask them. And also, if you have opinions about stuff, throw it in the chat and we'll see if we can get to that as well. Does that make sense to everybody? Cool. We're going to go for about an hour. I want to respect everybody's time, so we have a total of about 52 minutes. That means 1 minute per question. Oh. Great. Look how great that works out,
Done.
Right?
Perfect.
We're going to talk about so many things about the business of design. Everything from what to do if a client doesn't pay you for your work, the nuances around using black versus white designer created typefaces, DEI efforts, calling BS on stuff, dragging people. We're going to do it all, okay? So let me gas you up a little bit and then we'll go right in, okay?
Sweet.
So the founder and creative force behind Firebrand, specializes in brand identity. I'm talking about you, by the way, not me, just for the audience. Yeah. You're a relatively prolific writer on Medium and a whole bunch of other places. You're a speaker, type designer, and so much more. I know, and we're going to get into this, we're going to talk about a little bit about your chat about Black Lives not being a design sprint. And that is just as a headline, that's just like, okay, I am into it. So we're definitely going to talk about that a little bit. And I think what's really nice about it is it kind of calls for a very radical restructuring and of everything, which I think is very desperately needed. So welcome. Now let's play a game. I've never done this before, but the first person who can find and post the link to that talk that I just recommended in the chat will get a free book from my collection. Okay, so go ahead, hustle, find her video, post in the chat. Okay, first one gets a free book. All right, so Schessa, are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Mitzi, you're disqualified. You don't get to play anyway. Schessa's disqualified from the game too.
I'm not playing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So, let's get going. Talk me through what you did this morning. What was the first thing you did when you woke up?
Okay. First thing I did when I woke up was existential dread. And then I told my partner about the dream that I had the night before, which I tend to do a lot. I try to get it out there before I forget it. Today was wash day, so the hair is extra large. And today was also water the plants day. So these are some of my plant babies. They all get watered on Friday morning, and then I don't forget.
Now, are you comfortable sharing what the dream was about?
Oh my gosh, it was honestly about a lot of weird things. I have a recurring motif in my dreams that I'm a camp counselor. I did a lot of camp counseling in high school or in college and a little bit afterward. So surrounded by just like random kids, like we're like on a field trip or something. This is gonna sound so apocalyptic, but we like looked out there was like an island out over the coast, and there was like black smoke coming over the island and like coming up onto the beach. So, and then everything turned black and white, and I've never had a black and white dream. So it was very film noir. It was honestly very cinematic, but and then weird shit with my friends ensued. It was a lot of fun.
That's really interesting. Now, let's talk about the opposite. Let's talk about a nightmare. Let's talk
Ooh,
about
okay.
trying to win over a client. Okay. So what is your method? We've heard from some amazing speakers over the last few days on how they win, and I'm really curious. I think the rest of the chat is really curious. What's Schessa's approach to winning over a client?
Sure. So the way that most people approach, so I've actually stopped like cold calling people and pitching them for work. And part of my reasoning for that is if somebody needs design, they either already have a resource, or they're going to put out some kind of RFP or call for design. So what I do have is on my website, there's like a get started link, and it's just like a little survey for potential clients to take. That's like basic contact info. What's your project about? And for me, that's a great way to, one, get rid of any spam bots who are just going to like spam my inbox with random things, but two, to do a preliminary, just like, what is this about? Am I interested? Any red flags? Like I got one a couple weeks ago that was like, hey, we need something right now. We need something ASAP. And I was like, that's not how I work. And then I'll typically follow up with a half an hour hello call. I'll tell them about Firebrand and our process. I think a lot of a designer's work is relationship building with a client. So it really starts with that first conversation being about, who am I? What am I about? What are you about? Do we vibe? Like, do we want to even like work together and have a professional relationship? And then after that, I mean, whether the work is boring or cool, most of the time it has like a social impact element to it, or a social justice element. So that's sort of my process. I don't know that was like a linear explanation, but I guess like winning a client over for me is about building a relationship with them, and then also showing them work that's relevant to the project that they are interested in creating together.
That's awesome. Now, a lot of things to unpack. I have two questions based on it. One is,
Yeah.
what if you don't have any relevant work that you've done personally that might relate to them? What do you do in that situation?
Um, I guess I will usually tell them up front, hey, if they're like, hey, I want like motion design, for example, that's not something that I can do. I will tell them up front, hey, that's not my specialty. If you still want to work together and you like my aesthetic and the my process, I would bring in a freelancer that has that specific skill set. A tip that I got a few years ago that I still hold to today is show the work in your portfolio that you want to get. Clients are super literal. They will go to your website. They will look at the first couple of projects and be like, okay, this is what this person does. I believe them when they say that this is what they do. And then they'll hit you up based on that if what you say you do is what they're looking for. So the work that you show is the work that you're going to get.
Now, something that happens all the time is a client comes to a designer and says, I loved what you did for this brand. I want exactly that. I will just tell me how much you paid for that and just duplicate, throw my logo on there, and we're done. How do you respond to that? Because I feel like a lot of designers get that, and they end up, for better for worse, end up creating kind of stuff over and over and over again.
That's a great question. I think I would say to them, by nature of you being a different person with a different initiative, a different probably focus, it doesn't make sense for us to recreate something and one, make your brand not very strong because we're just copying something else that I've done. And two, it's kind of a disservice to that past client to copy the brand work or the design work that I've done. Yeah, I think if somebody, I've had people come to me and say, oh, I like your style. Can you bring your style to this project? Then that for me feels good. If somebody's like, hey, can you copy paste this? That's a red flag. And depending on the project, I would honestly probably say, oh, I don't think this is going to work out. Or I would sort of guide the process and guide them in the way that I usually think about things, which is we're here to create ownable things for each brand, not just do a copy paste thing.
That's awesome. Now we're going to get to how the fuck to create a style, your own style as a designer. We're going to get to that in a second because imposter syndrome is real. But the first thing, so something that I think young folk always have an issue with is how to answer the question, what's your greatest weakness in an interview? And sometimes they're like, well, is there a right way to answer that? I work too hard, yeah. Right? And
right.
You don't want to hear that as an employer, stuff like that. So I feel like that is very analogous to getting into a situation where you don't necessarily know the industry, because one of my favorite answers to hear, at least as an employer, is, yeah, Ratish, I actually don't have a lot of experience in that specific industry. And I actually see that not as a weakness, I see that as a benefit, because oftentimes people in the industry are not innovating, and bringing somebody else from different industries could help with innovation. So if for any of you designers out, I'm curious how that resonates with you, but like for any of the designers out there who might not have experience in a specific industry or, whatever, I think it's actually a good thing that you say, I actually don't have an experience, but I will do whatever I can to like immerse myself, blah, blah, blah. And with that comes like a naivete. So I'm going to be able to innovate. How does that resonate with you?
If somebody gave me that, you're asking if somebody gave me that answer, for example?
Yeah. Do you buy that?
I think I would appreciate their straightforwardness. I would probably follow up and ask them, okay, well, what interests you about this industry? Even if it's not, work in your portfolio, what drew you to this job? What passions do you have that kind of intersect with this work? Love it.
Now let's talk about the elephant in the room. How the fuck to create your own style?
Yeah. And this is, I think you mentioned that we might talk about like white design aesthetics. So
oh yeah,
so this is definitely relevant to that. For me, actually, it's been kind of an unlearning of what good design is supposed to be. And it's also been looking at references that I'm drawn to that other folks aren't necessarily drawn to. And finding like weird intersections and being okay with things clashing a little bit. For example, right now, a lot of my personal work is around thinking of graphic design as a form of like witchcraft, or as a form of like sigil making and like space defining and things like that. So for me, research-wise, or in terms of building a style, it's been like, okay, let's look at the history of like typography in like witchy things. So let's like look at runes, and let's look at like different cultures' view on witches, and let's look at mantras and personal mantras and statements that I have that have stuck with me. I'm doing a project about like mantras and intention setting right now. So in terms of building your own style, I think it's important to listen to your inner critic, but also to ignore them sometimes and just experiment and do weird things and show them to people. And half of the time people will be like, that looks really cool. Like that doesn't look like anything I've seen. And that kind of lets you know that you're going in the right direction.
Now, Rosie's giving you a shout out, quote, "This is awesome!" ! End quote in the chat. Thank you, Rosie.
Thanks, Rosie.
Now, do you have a publicly available inspiration board, maybe on Arena or Pinterest or something, to kind of maybe give us a little bit more visuals to kind of what you're talking about?
Sure. So I don't have my Pinterest board for the witch stuff available, but I can send you my overall Pinterest. I just put it in the chat. And you can see some of the like broader design things that I'm looking at. It's all categorized by like typography, color palettes, layouts. Yeah, so that's kind of where I'm at in terms of collecting inspiration. A lot of, like, you can't see them on my public profile, but I have a lot of secret boards for like current and past clients, and each person, and there's a lot of like sort of cross pollination between those boards, but essentially what I'll do is like aggregate a ton of images, like not look at it for a while, and then come back and see what themes and color palettes and type palettes are emerging.
That's awesome. So please, y'all, don't spend the rest of the chat just looking at our Pinterest board. Do that later. I promise it will still exist. So thank you for that. One tool that I've been vibing on with some of my designers has been Arena. Have you heard of it?
I have no idea what it is.
Yeah, it's like a Pinterest, but like less ads and less venture capital.
Sweet.
It seems like.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
I'm down with it. I fuck with it. So check that out if anybody hasn't. I think the URL is like are.na, something like that.
Yeah.
That's not an official endorsement. It's just something that I use at work.
Sweet.
Okay. Oh, somebody in the chat
Yeah,
should have invested in Pinterest when I had the chance. I know. Yeah. I think we all regret that. Vote. Okay. So, let's talk about during the conference. Mm-hmm. We had it a few months ago. You wrote on our Slack, and you got a lot of love for it. That quote, the revolution will not be diversity training, end quote. And I think all the attendees will agree with that. But two questions. Number one, so what will be the revolution? And number two, what can Black designers comfortably say to leadership in workplaces to get white folk to understand that fact without feeling like they're going to get fired?
Yeah. So that thing that I said in the Slack is actually a quote from a tweet. I just want to say it wasn't my original idea, but I quoted it and I didn't remember who it was from. So I'm sure if you Google it, you could find it. But to answer your first question, so I think the revolution starts with us actually listening to, and then also empowering and really returning power to Black femmes, Indigenous folks, and basically like just folks that like aren't in the boardroom right now. And you know, I don't know, the boardroom is like one place to have power. I think just like listening to Black women is always what I go to when I'm like, what are we supposed to be doing right now? Listening to Indigenous folks, trusting them and the ancient knowledge that they have around how to work with the land, how to be together. Right now I'm reading Braiding Sweetgrass by Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, and she talks a lot about how humans are she calls us the younger brothers of creation, and how we need to be listening to nature and the ways that it's organized in order to kind of return to a better structure and way of living sort of in sync with each other and with the world. So I think like that's what I want the revolution to be, is us saying, nah, the system's actually not working for most people, and we're actually going to do something about it because we have the people power to do it. So how do you say that to your boss? This question, and you sent me this question ahead of time, and I've really been thinking on it all week, and I want to take a step back from like giving you a script for what to say to your boss, Um, and I want to ask what for me is the elephant in the room, which is your relationship with your boss is just that. It's a relationship. And why is it allowed to be abusive in the sense that you go to your boss and you say, hey, you know, you're like, our diversity sucks, or like, why haven't you given me a raise, but you've given my white colleagues a raise? And you feel like they're gonna fire you, like that. And I like respect and affirm that is a real fear, but it's also like time to start rethinking, why am I in this relationship? Why am I in this type of relationship? And I would like to hear actually from other people in the audience, if you had a specific story to tell, or a specific experience recently with your boss, like this summer or this fall, trying to bring that up and how it went. I I personally, I recently left my job, or at the beginning of the year, I left my job to start Firebrand, partially because my boss was like, hey, so I feel like you should do more to earn this promotion. And I was like, dude, I have been doing more for 2 years. Like, I gotta go, which is what I ended up saying to her, 2 months later.
So fucking cool that you just said, peace, I'm starting my own thing and I'm going to build it right. That's awesome. I know the percentage of agencies in the US is mostly white led, and mostly white men led. So it's incredible. Let's talk about starting your own thing. Let's do that. Let's meander. Let's go in.
Love
We're
it.
probably not going to get all the 52 questions, but it's okay. It's about the quality, right?
Yeah,
So
it's about the journey.
Exactly. So talk to me about you starting your own thing.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to me about, how did you make your first dollar doing your own thing? What did you do with that dollar? Did you go to the bank? Did you invest in a 401k? Like, what did you do? Did you pay your taxes?
Okay.
Talk to me about all that stuff in the first couple of weeks of starting your own thing.
So I technically started Firebrand. I like registered the LLC in May of this year. The idea for Firebrand, the name have been around, or had been around at that point, for about a year. And I had been freelancing since, even in college and since I graduated, for years. So I had, in addition to my full-time job, kind of a freelance client base. End of 2019, I was like, this isn't really working. Let me start to save money, like actually like make sure I have this emergency fund, which people recommend. It should be 3 months of pay. I think I did like 6 months because I was like, I don't know what's going to happen. And that, having that financial cushion empowered me to then like think clearly, less about like, oh my God, like what's going to happen, to rent and things like that. And to be able to take a step back and be like, what's the vision I have for my working life moving forward? So my first couple of weeks was setting up my website, transitioning the clients that were ready to do work into like, hey, I'm Firebrand now, this is what we're about. The invoice looks different. You need a new W-9 that's specific to my company and not just me as a individual. The first things I bought, I did get a business bank account, separate. So this is just like nuts and bolts stuff, but separate from my personal bank account. And then I also got a separate email address and website. So just kind of starting from scratch. And this is like maybe like really boring, but making sure that my like business entity and business identity were set up and strong. And I'm still learning about like, tax stuff and all of that good stuff. But those are the things that I did the first couple of weeks.
Now, chat, can you please validate that it's okay that we go into nuts and bolts stuff? Is that okay? because I personally feel that the nuts and bolts stuff and the non-flashy stuff is where black designers can get totally screwed. If they,
Yeah.
if not everything is in order, there's lawsuits and whatnot, and I think we all have to be aware of it. All right, cool. So we have permission to keep going the nuts and bolts.
Great.
How the hell
Thank
did you
you.
start an LLC? Did you go through Shapiro's LegalZoom or whatever.com, or did you do it all yourself? How'd you do that?
So I did it all myself, with the caveat being I worked with a mentor turned client turned friend. His name is Jason. He runs the Burnt Sienna Research Society, which is a design research agency. And he literally was like, I'm going to send you an email. It felt very like spy movie. He was like, it has 4 steps. Here's how to set up your LLC. Here's one to do this and this and this. You can do it yourself all online for the most part. It's not super fancy if it's just like a single member LLC, which is what I have. What was the second part of your question?
I don't know. I don't know. I
Cool.
don't know. There's so much to dive into, right? I think
Right.
beyond that. So you talked about this interesting thing about having a cushion fund.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody right now has the idea to start their own thing, which I think
Yeah.
a lot of folks in the audience want to do eventually,
Yeah.
it's a common thing. How many months? So you said you need about 3 months of cushion of salary. So when realistically should they start saving up, and when realistically do you think that most folks can actually start their company themselves? So in other words,
Mm-hmm.
did they have to start like a year in advance and start saving up 10% and turn to peanut butter and jelly sandwiches and have to give up a whole bunch of other stuff? Or like, what was that like? Like, talk me through
Sure.
that timeline so that way people can start thinking about, if I have the idea, I think I should start doing my own thing X date.
Yeah. Yeah. So know, this sounds silly, but like know how much you make a month, like calculate what you actually need to save. And then look at your monthly expenses and how much you can feasibly save. So for some people, it's like, hey, I can only save, this is like a made up number, but you're like, I need like 4,500 to get through, and that's like super low, to get through 3 months. And you're like, my monthly expenses are 1,000 plus, I go out, I eat or whatever, that's like another 300. So I have 200 left over every month. Start saving that 200. And if you're like, and then you have to backtrack and calculate how many months that's going to take. For me, my full-time job was covering my just living expenses. So like rent, electricity, internet, all that stuff. And then the freelance work that I was doing was supplemental cash to that. So I was saving like all of my freelance money. Like it is very tempting to go and splurge and be like, oh, cool, I'm going to like ball out for Christmas, or I'm going to like go on this trip. I think for 6 months I was like, okay, like literally not spending any of my freelance money. I'm very intense about about my finances. Actually, early 2019, I finished paying off my student loan debt, so I didn't have to spend money on that. And I just like saved all the extra cash I was making. At the end of the month, if I had extra money left over that I was like, oh, I didn't spend this, I would just like put it in my savings account.
All right. Now, what are some of the expenses that folks like yourself could expect to have to shell out for?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a lawyer? Do you have did you have to buy a new iMac with design software and put that and have that paid from your business account, bank
Right.
account? Like what are some of those hidden expenses that might bite you in the butt?
Sure. I would definitely say getting like a real office setup. So I'm currently still on my laptop that I have had since college. Don't tell her the laptop, but I am planning to upgrade at the end of this year, like give myself like a Christmas bonus. and get like an upgraded setup, just something that's not as old. Other hidden costs or things to think about are you do have to pay for like you have to pay monthly for like your email service. For like your Squarespace, you can pay like a year in advance. General office supplies, like I recently did a Juneteenth lettering print that I was selling, and you have to pay for shipping, and you have to buy the tubes to ship the thing in, and you have to buy the tape to seal the tubes. I bought a printer. It's super tiny. It's sitting on my desk to print shipping labels. So things like that to get yourself set up. And you're going to realize that there's random stuff that you need along the way. So again, I would say don't spend all of your money on your payroll if you can avoid it. I have like my business account has a savings account, and that's there for when I'm like, oh, I need this extra thing. Let me make sure I can get that. It's also been recommended to me to save 30 to 40% of what I make for taxes. So I've been doing that as well.
That's awesome. Now, chat, if anybody has any more questions about starting your own thing, feel free to throw it in the chat. But we're going to move on to new topics, all right? And we can always come back to it later. So when you're creating a new brand, how cognizant are you that the typefaces are designed by Black folk? And do you find that you wanting to create your own typefaces is kind of a resistance tool?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm currently taking a type design class actually through Letterform Archive. They did a BIPOC scholarship, and I was like, yeah, I got to get this, and I applied for it, and very honored that they chose me for it. So I'm learning how to use RoboFont, which is one of the softwares you can use to make fonts. And a large part of it was there are Black type designers like Vocal Type and other people like that. I think of type design as one, really fun for me, but two, a way to have passive income. It's digital downloads. People can be like, oh, this font's cool, I'll pay however many bucks. For me, a lot of my identity work, especially for logos, I end up either creating a logo type custom from scratch or modifying something. So there is always a Black designer's hand in my work. I think it's tough when you're doing web design, for example, because a lot of people are like, oh, we're going to use like Google Fonts because we don't have to like buy it or host it. It's tough having that as a project requirement, but yeah, I think I just want there to be more Black type designers in the world, and I want to be one of them. And who knows, maybe Google Fonts will be like, yeah, we'll like host your typeface. And then this will be a less tricky and sticky question.
Totally. So first of all, there's a Notion document. I don't know if you're familiar. It's called Black Type Designers and Foundry Owners. I don't see your name on here. Why isn't your name on here?
Because I'm new. I'm baby.
We're gonna get you on there. Somebody please add her name on there, okay?
Thanks.
And
it'll probably be me.
The second thing is, I just quickly Googled, are you doing is it with Graham Bradley or some other?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Graham Bradley, and then Silas Monroe from Polymode is our TA.
Oh.
Yeah.
Legend.
Yeah.
I believe Silas is in our Where the Black Designers Slack channel, if I'm not mistaken.
I think he is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Incredible type designer. Have you all heard of him?
You guys should check out his stuff. He has so many lectures. He's so cool.
Okay. So fantastic. Now this is a good question from Candace. So the handoff phase, when you're so close to finally billing them your last invoice, and they're like, can we have the design files? Can we have the Illustrator, Adobe, Photoshop, everything? Can we have all that together? Do you have a policy where it's totally fine for them to take everything, or do you like to own and keep hold of that, and they have to go through you in order to make updates?
Got it. So this depends on the client, and this is something you can work into your scope. For some people, or for some clients, maintaining ownership and being the only one with the editable files is what they want and what I want, because they're like, I don't know what this is. I'm not going to be able to do something better. But for other clients, they're like, oh, you know, we actually do have, you know, like an in-house designer, but they're not an identity person. But they could take your files and your design style guide and create something based on that. I have, over the years, actually become more zen and less precious once I've handed things off, or first of all, once the client has paid me the final payment, then I hand them the work, is a really important, crucial step. But I have said to myself, okay, like the work's out in the world, it has its own life with that client now. And I have become okay with taking a step back. And if the client runs with it and it's great, that's awesome. If they take it in a weird direction, I'm like, it's yours now. Like you will do with it what you feel is right for your brand. And I need to be okay with that.
Right. Now, let's see here. I have so many questions to ask you based on so many things. First off, where are people going to be able to see your released fonts? Are you going to release it on Future Fonts to XYZ or some other website? How can people see your upcoming work for all the typing?
Yeah, sure. You can see my work in progress on my personal Instagram, which is at @_Schessa. I don't know where I'm going to release them yet. That's actually something we're supposed to cover in class, which is like font licensing and where to release things. Future fonts would be cool because I could make updates. I think that's like a cool part of that platform. But I've also, I don't know, I've been thinking about hosting them just on my own website and like not having the middleman. I think that could be cool too.
100%. I think if you have the means to do that and you're able to figure out all that stuff, I think that's the way to go. Why give 8% or whatever it is to, to other folks, right? That's awesome. Well, we look forward to seeing that stuff released. So everyone follow @_Schessa, correct?
The Schessa here.
The Schessa, correct, right? Awesome. So you recently spoke for San Francisco Design Week. Mm-hmm. And you shared one of your favorite Instagram posts in the presentation. And the post said, quote, "Graphic design is inherently racist, sexist, and classist," with a little less than symbol and a 3, right? For a heart, end quote. So if this is truly the case, how do we convince designers of color, particularly Black women and non-binary folks, that graphic design is a worthwhile pursuit?
Convince is a tough word because I have stopped trying to convince people of things. I'm just like, you're going to do what you want, dude. Like, I can't put energy into that. But barring that, I think what I would say to that is historically and presently, graphic design is those things. But ultimately, it's a trade and it's a tool that we can use for good, or we can weaponize it and use it for, you know, just like promoting trash and filling landfills. So I would say that if you want to get into design, by nature of being somebody who is not what we're currently seeing in the design landscape, being a person of color, being non-binary, whatever it is, and also doing the work and unlearning your own shit, you are changing the industry and making it less those things.
Love it. Now, how do you, apart from essentially creating your own type, are there other ways that you're divesting from white supremacy in your everyday like designs and stuff?
Yeah. It's been important for me to look at references that aren't just by white people, which sounds really simple, but am following more Black pages. I am following, there's a really cool one called Afrovisualism on Instagram. And it's just like so many high quality posts about what other Black creators are doing, especially in like the music and cinematography spaces. And yeah, it's just like unlearn, like basically like pushing out or calibrating the ratio of the white design that I'm looking at with other things. And sometimes I'm like, I'm looking at this, I can't even read this. This is in a different language, but it's just different. I'm just glad that it's different. Like it's fresh. It's a totally different way of thinking about space and type and the page.
I love it. I believe the handle is Afrovisualism, right? I think I shared the right one in the chat. Super awesome handle. Thank you for that. Yeah. One of my favorite techno artists from Detroit is Drexia. If anybody if anybody is a techno fan, you'll probably know the term Drexia. And what I love about them is they said, fuck you to the rest of the techno industry, and they created their own world. Like they have their own visual identity. It's like this underwater world, and they created it featuring Black folk. Like it's a really interesting visual direction. So I love this idea of creating your own stuff, right? Yeah. I love that. It's really cool. And if there are any techno fans out there, please DM me. I will talk about techno all day long.
Have you, sorry, I'm gonna ask you a question, a very quick question. Have you watched the documentary called Black to Techno?
Have I?
I don't know, dude, you gotta watch it. It's like 20 minutes long. It changed my life. Highly recommend to anybody, like watch it tonight. It's short. It's about how techno started in Detroit and why, and it's just, it's like a reclaiming for me of the genre, and it's like so, and the visuals are amazing.
Incredible. I just posted the link to it in the chat. I love that it features underground resistance, etc. I believe one person from underground resistance actually spun for the Where the Black Designers conference a few months ago, which is awesome. Yeah, like a really dope set at the end. It's on YouTube. But okay, cool. Let's keep going. Holy shit, we only have 11 minutes left. Okay, chat, if you have any other questions, again, please feel free to put them in the window. Let's talk about the education system. Do you think we need design schools or not?
So I don't think you need to have a design degree to be a good designer. However, I do, at least for me and the way that I learn through conversations and lectures and talking to people and like live demos. I think design school is awesome. I think it needs to be more accessible and more inclusive, which is what everyone's been saying. And part of that is teachers need to be referencing and showing how to research more than just the white design canon, but also the teachers themselves need to be more diverse. I saw this tweet the other day that was like, a lot of teachers are asking how they can support anti-racism efforts on campus. And I think that the main thing they should do is quit. And I thought that was, that was a great response. Like just make space and room for more diverse voices.
Let's talk about some diverse voices. Who are some of your favorites? Any else on Instagram? Any books that you read? Any lectures, sure. TED Talks, etc.? Yeah. You want to give a shout out to?
Okay. So really good TED Talk that I listened to recently was, I believe, I'm gonna get this wrong. Let me Google it because I'm about to get it wrong. It's either the Taiwanese or the Vietnamese minister, digital minister, does this great talk about, I'm not gonna be able to find this in time. Does this great talk about using, yes, is it Taiwan? A Taiwanese digital minister. So sorry, but you're gonna have to look that up. Look up their TED Talk.
I think I already found it. Audrey
Sweet.
Tang?
Yeah.
Found it.
You're like a really fast Googler. I'm not this fast. And they talk about how they are using the internet to create a less centralized and a more accurate view into like democracy and people like contributing ideas to the government and like being actually in dialogue with the community that they are designing these policies for.
Super interesting. I think I found the exact TED Talk. I threw it in the chat. Thank you for that. I didn't know that one existed. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Now let's talk a little bit about how are the Black designers, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've been a relatively big advocate of this idea of rest as resistance. Can you talk a little bit about what that means and why you think that's important?
Sure. So you guys should follow the Nap Ministry on Instagram and Twitter. She was the one that, these were thoughts that I already had, and it was part of the reason that I started Firebrand, was because I was working a full workday and then I came home and I did like 2 to 3 more hours of work every night. And I was like, bro, when do I like actually rest or do something that I want to do besides work? But she talks about how grind culture and hustle culture have sort of been like poisoned and turned toxic, because then it's like any waking moment, you know, you should be working, you should be earning money, you should be, you know, trying to get your next big break. But it's not sustainable. Like it's not possible to just keep going all the time. So for me, that has looked like having business hours. It's work from home. We're all like working way longer than we should be. We were already working longer hours than we should have been. I see patient's face. She's like, yeah, that's the truth. And now that there's not like the office and then home, it's all the same place, I think we're working even more. So for me, it's been intentionally saying, dude, I have a headache right now. Like I need to get off the computer for a little bit and drink some water and take an Advil and just like lay down. And unlearning the guilt that I would feel for doing that in the past.
And I think this idea of rest it's kind of intimately related to your talk about basically like Black Lives Matter not being a design challenge, right? Or not being a design sprint. Because when you're thinking about a design sprint, it's this like go, 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 no holds barred, 2-week or whatever thing, and no sleep, whatever. You see this at ad agencies all the time. Yeah. But it's not that. You're able to rest. This is a lifelong thing for everyone, right? Does that resonate with you? Do you feel like rest and your talk about that are not mutually exclusive and they're related?
No, they're definitely related. I think when we realize like everything's actually not a rush, like anti-racism work will be here to do tomorrow and in a month and in a decade, unfortunately, but also and we know that we have our colleagues and our friends and our allies that are also doing this work. So it's okay to tap out and be like, hey, I need you to tap in for this. Knowing that the work will always be there. If we as activists burn out within, you know, the year, then our movement loses momentum. So rest is actually vital to keeping the work going.
Okay. 5 minutes left. I'm going to give you as many rapid fire questions as you have to answer in, let's say, 10 seconds or less. Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Are you sure?
No.
Okay. So, flat fees or hourly rates? How do you charge?
I do flat fees. And I add 20% to what I think my hours would be.
Perfect. You do that because to pad it, just in case?
Yeah.
Okay, fantastic. Candace agrees in the chat. What are some atypical industries that designers in the audience should consider checking out that are not obvious?
Yeah. I would check out cultural institutions like museums and things like that. And honestly, like check out things that you are interested in that aren't design related, because every industry needs design. So if you're like, I'm into skating, like go hit up Zoomies or whatever, or go hit up your local skate shop and see what kind of work they need. If you're into like moss, go hit up, which I'm into. And I mean like literally like the little green stuff. Go hit up your local arboretum or your local botanical gardens and see if they're hiring. Create a personal project to show them or to show other people in your portfolio. And then the next time somebody comes around, you can be like, hey, this is the type of work I want to do. And they're like, oh, cool, we have plants. You can do that work for us.
Let's say a client doesn't pay you for your work, even though it's in the contract. What do you do?
I can't, honestly, this hasn't happened to me in so long. I like don't even remember.
Lucky.
But yeah, yeah, knock on wood, dude, don't jinx me. But I always take a initial deposit from my clients. So that can be 50%. I'm flexible with payment plans. Sometimes it's like 30%. And that pretty much deters people that are not actually interested in paying you. You can also take people to small claims court if you signed a contract and they haven't paid you and it's less than 10K.
What's a hack that you use in Adobe Illustrator, Sketch, or some other tool?
Sure. So I don't have like a fancy key command or anything like that, but something that I learned early on was don't work destructively. So version up all the time. If I'm doing a logo and I'm like, oh, I changed the T, like copy paste that. Oh, I'm changing like the spacing, copy paste that. Like literally, and you have just like your Pokemon evolution all the way down the line, and keeping all of those because sometimes you want to go back to it.
Love it. Swiss design grid or no grid?
I think I always have an underlying grid. Sometimes I will intentionally break it in some areas to draw the eye to that area.
Fantastic. What's the biggest problem in the world that designers should help solve?
How do we solve the redistribution of wealth and resources? Like, that's not even a design question. I'm just like, as humans, I think that that is the biggest problem.
Is there anything that you think designers should do in order to make that happen?
I think designers can always be pushing for more sustainable practices, and that's not just packaging stuff. That's also like, hey, where's our server being hosted? Like, are they like cutting down trees to host these server farms? I mean, you can go like way down the rabbit hole, but I think advocating for your user, bringing them into the design process early on, and then also working in a way that's sustainable.
If you're at a dinner party and it's all people who are your potential clients, who do you choose to speak to first? And what's your opening line?
That's really funny. I don't know, because I'm like actually pretty awkward. It very much depends on the situation. I would probably go up to them and compliment their outfit if I didn't know anything about them, or if I did know something about like a recent work or achievement that they'd had, I would bring that up.
I love that. Client flattery, always a great way to open a meeting, right? Yeah. Especially on Zoom. Yeah. What's your favorite healthy and delicious and easy to make meal for yourself?
I really like shakshuka, which is like a tomato stew with like eggs in it.
Halloumi cheese in it or no?
Oh, you know what? Sometimes, but we haven't been doing it as much. We've been doing feta recently, so like, eh.
Fire. There's a amazing dish called sag paneer in Indian culture.
Yeah.
One of the ex Bon Appetit folks, she created a book, and she has one where she substitutes feta for the paneer, and it is absolute fire. Very easy to find and very easy to make.
Okay, Candace, you gotta send me that.
Oh, it's so good. Let me see if I can find it while you're answering the next question. What's a skill that design schools don't teach but should?
So like all the design business stuff that I mentioned, basic stuff like calculating your rate, how to ask for a raise, how to interview, None of that stuff ever gets covered. But it's like designers and artists are like, you're making stuff, like you're like constantly selling your own work essentially. So you should know the business of that a lot better, I think.
The other volunteer folks don't necessarily know this, but I'm thinking it'd be really cool to do like a little like workshop on designing your own invoice. And you
Oh,
know,
I'm
everyone
super
can
down.
design their own invoices. We talk about it, all that stuff. That'd be a lot of fun, I think.
I love
Um,
that.
let's see here. Uh, we're pretty much at time. I don't want to keep you too long. How much longer do you have with us?
I'm good, dude. This is like my last thing for the day, and then I'm gonna go nap. So
Boom. Okay. I did drop the Bon Appetit
I got it. I
stock
opened it.
paneer
Yeah.
with feta in it. It is absolute fire and it keeps really well.
Oh, good. Okay.
That's really important. Um, okay, so let's talk about you for a second. Well, I guess we've been talking about you the whole entire
Yeah, I
time.
was like, oh, damn.
But
Wait,
but
who?
let's talk about you. So, what are some projects we can look forward to coming from you in that you're comfortable talking about?
Sure. Um, so I'm currently working on the witch stuff that I mentioned before. Um, it's going to be, oh man, I don't want to give it away because like it's fine. But it's basically going to be like space creation and like mantra setting for like it's going to be decoration based things for like rooms or your work desk or your laptop or whatever, which is very vague, but that is something to look forward to. And then a lot of identity work coming up in the next couple of months that hopefully I will post on the Firebrand Instagram. I'm not a good poster of work, so working on that.
Fantastic. Now, you did write on your Medium article that you asked people to support your writing via PayPal. Is that one of the major ways that folks in the audience can help support your work, or is there somewhere else?
So the PayPal links are are for really for white folks who are like, hey, it's basically for them to be like, yeah, I think that Black women should be paid for their labor. Um, but I think for the folks here, I would say support me by following my work, sharing it. I would hope to do the same for you guys. And join my like freelance network. So I don't have any employees at the moment, but I have a network of incredible people who want to do social good work or who want to work with Firebrand. So you can sign up for that. It's firebrand.house/freelance is the hidden link that I send to people.
Found it. Last
Awesome.
question, at least from me. Maybe there might be some that pop in the chat.
Sure.
What's your openness to being a mentor yourself? Like if anybody comes to you, like do you take on mentors, and like how much time do you realistically have to dedicate if so?
Realistically, I have zero time, but if you make the effort to like hit me up and you're like, hey, I have some specific questions for you, or can you review my portfolio and give me your thoughts, like I will make the time for you. It can't be same day or immediately, but within the next couple of weeks I would probably be able to say hey and connect.
That's fantastic. Now, what's the best way? In the DMs on Insta or email, Slack? What's most convenient for you? Maybe
Good
email?
question. I think I would probably go to my general contact page on my website, or you can DM me on Instagram.
Okay, fantastic.
But the general contact, yeah, I would do that over Instagram.
Well, this was absolute fire. Thank you for dropping on your knowledge. We covered so much stuff. Divesting, we talked about yourself, we talked about making some shit happen.
Yeah.
We talked about starting your own thing, like all the nitty gritty nuts and bolts. Chat is going crazy for you. So thank you so much for chatting with us.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, everyone.